We're going to be starting in just a second. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Yeah. It's got 10 seconds, and then the show's going to start.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the HAL SPARKS radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
HAL SPARKS, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
HAL SPARKS.
All right, let's do this.
Well, Johnny, I'm torn this week. I'm torn between making the standard fare joke of, slow news week, nothing to talk about, or the a raging "I told you so" that's wind-up began in 2015.
If not 1980.
Right, sure. Well, granted, but let's. You and I only started voting in '88, in that election. Yeah. So I can't. Again, I really only will. In many ways, I can talk in the abstract about politics that happened before I was born and the like, and I will always do them with sort of a intellectual, ethical, and philosophical grain of salt, because I had no part to play, nor did I grow up in the period where that happened. So I can speak to the wrongs that I believe existed before I was born, but I also know that if I was born in those times, my perception of them would be slightly different. And so, my awareness of that is ongoing. And so I hope it gives me more of an informed opinion about how things started and how you avoid them, and how positive, regular progress, incremental progress, is never to be dismissed. And you keep and hold every gain you have as if it's important, and you vote in accordance with maintaining and securing the rights that you have achieved and the goals that you have achieved so far. Now, I know if you watch a lot of TYT and Jimmy Dore and that crowd, they have moments of clarity, but the rest of the time, they're basically saying that all the wins that have been secured by, civil rights activists and women's rights activists and allies in the LGBT community and the LGBT community itself, those are that's old news. That's yesterday's news. We handled those things. Roe v. Wade basically left this fine, but there's contraception, gay marriage. Sure, the Democrats secured all of that stuff, but what have you done for me lately? Maybe I should just give this Donald Trump fella a try. I like the cut of his jib, and anything beats a woman running the joint. And
those emails.
But the emails. But the emails.
That was all I could think of when that ruling came down, was those emails.
So the Supreme Court ruling that effectively not only overrules Roe v. Wade, but also Casey as well, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, is shocking enough. I mean, we knew this draft opinion had come out. There was some thought about, who was the person that leaked it, and would that person, was that a left-leaning person attempting to get them to change their mind through people pressuring the court once they knew this was about to come down, or was this a right-leaning person who was trying to gin up the vote and help during the primary season, which I find more logical, but we'll get to that later. So that, right-wingers would have something to motivate people to get to the polls going into this and the next election. Oh my gosh, Hal Vickery, bless you. I won't be able to make Sexy Liberal Chicago this year, so here's a price of my meet and grope ticket plus what I'd normally get. Oh, Hal Vickery, thank you so much for that support. I'm at this point, Hal Vickery, I'm going to have to come to your house and just do a private stand-up show. I clear off.
I'm really glad how that sentence finished. I didn't know where we were headed.
Yes, you did, because I've given you a private stand-up show multiple times throughout our friendship.
Pretty much every day in high school.
That's right. Met. See, you know what I mean? Like you're still working off your debt. That's why you do the show for free. No, I bless you, Hal Vickery, and thank you for your ongoing support. And thanks everybody who listens to the show and has helped us grow over the years. It's very heartwarming. And especially in my current infuriated state. I got news for you, Democrats, progressives, liberals, however you want to label and bifurcate yourself out. If you even toy with the idea of believing in a woman's right to choose, or separation of church and state, or the ability of gay people to get married, or even because people have been throwing around whether Clarence Thomas thinks loving is next, and he could throw that one out so he doesn't have to divorce Ginny and he doesn't owe her a dime because, sorry, honey, the Supreme Court nullified our relationship. We never were married really legally. If he wants to go back and revisit all of those things. And if you even at any point have pretended to believe in those rights, and you're like, I don't know, but is Biden really, I don't know, do the Democrats really, are they ever doing anything? I mean, it's a ridiculous concept when you talk about the first infrastructure bill in 30 years, the first gun safety bill in 30 years, the ability to actually create bipartisan consensus in these situations, which is amazing and mind-blowing. And then the rescue package, which stabilized the country. And I mean, we were already headed into a recession in February of 2020 before COVID hit, and COVID masked over it for Trump's sake. He benefited ultimately from the existence of it. But if you think at this point that you can do a protest vote or a write-in candidate or a sideline vote because, you don't think enough is going on, it's madness enough that you take for granted all the gains Democrats have gotten over the years. It's crazy enough that you might have, been one of those voters that either didn't vote when Al Gore was running or voted the other way because, I don't know, he seems like a nicer guy and Gore's a little wooden, when it was the first time that we had a budget surplus in 60 years. That alone should have been a sign that stewardship under Democrats was better for your life in general. And had it gone on uninterrupted, only a psychopath thinks that Al Gore would have reacted to 9/11 if it would have even happened because he wouldn't have ignored the PDB. That's another, imagine that split in U.S. history. Imagine having someone like Al Gore or anyone, but any Democrat that was currently running at the time as president during 9/11, there would have been a response, no question. More than likely, it would have been in line with what John Kerry was talking about, that it is a international law and order issue, not a geopolitical issue because of where the people came from and where they were trained in Afghanistan. This is not about a war between countries because Afghanistan isn't a country. It's 12 tribes slapped together in a country that borders only exist because other countries don't want to go any further. And Al Gore's response, while there would have been something, would never have been Iraq. Even if you go with the idea that we would have been in Afghanistan, the extent to which we would have been in Afghanistan would have been much smaller. And the extent that the idea that we would have gone into Iraq is lunacy.
Yeah.
And so just that alone, just going, flipping a coin, Gore v. Bush, that in and of itself is morally, from a progressive or liberal viewpoint, a dereliction of duty. You are giving away small activities that you can do that guarantee by voting for someone who can actually be elected as opposed to, writing in a libertarian candidate because, the system. You guarantee that the course of human history and the course of action in the world goes a different way. And to let that go, especially when you know what the other side is, they've shown you where they want to go. The Project for New American Century had a 7-country domino plan that was genuinely only interrupted because while Cheney was sort of running Bush's background, who's basically the Cheney presidency, he was too old to run for office up against Obama, and they put McCain in there. McCain was welcome to that. Remember, bomb, Iran, that stuff.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Right, hilarious. And Obama comes in, and the only reason, they literally capsized the economy, but that wasn't enough of a lesson for anybody. Halfway through the Obama presidency, what have you done for me lately? And the numbers dim, and the Republicans see blood in the water, and they're like, Democrats like, a woman's right to choose. They like marriage equality, racial equality. They like human beings. You're right. They like human beings. They like things like an assault weapons ban or the Violence Against Women Act, which was originally drafted by the current president. But Hillary versus Trump. Honestly, or emails, which was apparently in Trump's mind so effective. We got to take a break. That he tried to recreate that moment at every point during his reelection and throughout. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'm not going to let this go, guys. I've been accused of vote shaming in the past. We'll get used to the idea of understanding that if that's the way you intend to ever vote again, at least in the next 6 cycles in the United States, you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed. That's a shameful thing to do if you actually believe in the things you purport to believe in. We'll be back. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Thank you, Mandy, so much. Just vote blue, period. First thing, it's our only hope. Turn the Senate blue. You're absolutely right, Mandy. And this is the thing that stuck out to me. During Biden's run, and it's because some senators, they kind of run in cycles. So some people are up, and when other people are up the next round. That there were certain people that were up for that would be up for election this time that weren't during the presidential election, and they really only have to fight every other presidential election, because they can kind of ride through on what their states, because of the low turnout aspect of it. And most of the time, even in the presidential elections, those folks, if every Democrat in their state actually voted, and every Republican that preferred somebody a little more sane went, you know what, I normally vote Republican, but I'm going to vote for some, because in those states, they're going to run a Manchin or a Sinema. They're not going to run somebody like Wyden or Schumer or something like that. Thank you. They're gonna run somebody that can get elected, and those Republicans would go, you know what, I could vote for this Democrat over that Republican. Honestly, they're sane and they would represent the state well. But there's not enough Democrats that show up to vote because they think it's a fait accompli and they don't vote. They're like, why? It's always a red state. It's going to be a red state. It's just red. Why bother? If they actually showed up, it would tip the balance. But they've been BS'd into thinking the state of their state is red and it will stay that way. And if there was just the volume of consistency, the 81 million people, thank you, the 81 million people who voted for Biden, if they just showed up 3 election cycles in a row,
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So we were just discussing during the break, one of the statistics that bugs me every time we come around these kind of issues is that in what we would consider purple states, and even in some red states, statistically speaking, there are enough what you would call centrist or left-leaning Republicans, socially liberal, fiscally conservative Republicans who are all about business and the idea that if you could sell them on, minor tax breaks and it's fine, you're not anti-business. But if you go, gay people should be allowed to get married, they are pro-choice, that kind of stuff. If they had a candidate they could actually vote for that was a Democrat, a good portion of the time they would slip over and do that in a less insane time. But most of the time, the Democrats in those states don't recognize the volume of how many are there or are so quiet about it because they're in a state full of loud Republicans that they just keep it to themselves. And they don't recognize how many people, how many like-minded voters there are in that state. And by the way, those like-minded voters are kept from voting Democratic because of the radical messaging of the right, the idea that the left wants, they can't define what a woman is, and they don't care, and that they want to take all your kids to drag queen shows, and they want to take all your guns and install communism. That part. And so they search the webs for any sentence that can be perceived by a Democratic congressperson or or an actual statement from them out of 240 some Democrats and go, that's the Democratic Party. And that's how they chase those voters around in these smaller states. But the other way they win, the easiest part of their job, is demoralized Democratic voters who take for granted the wins the Democratic Party has delivered, just don't care anymore. Just go, as a matter of fact, part of the Democratic Party's issue with those voters has been sort of the recognition that you have to quietly allow these things to be charted so that you don't stir up the other side. You don't make the right-wing activists, you don't wake them up and make them take over. That was the big fear for a long time. So you just kind of go, we're going to do this, but we're not going to just beat our chest everywhere we go. And so there was a lack of using the bully pulpit in one way to push the positivity of these things, but also touting these wins after they're done. You just go back to living. Everybody's got the right to gay marriage right now. We're not going to hammer people who are against it. We're just going to hope that they live and let live. And that works some of the time until in the timeline I was mentioning before the break, we get to Clinton versus Trump. And there was an active, and I would argue still ongoing, active move on the, specifically the progressive wing because of slights felt against Bernie Sanders, which, by the way, didn't happen. I'm just going to put that out there. He was not screwed by the Democratic Party. He's an independent who used the Democratic Party to run, and then he left and went back to being an independent, and then a few years later did the exact same thing again. That's not how it works. You don't get to just kind of jump in and use the Democratic Party as a super PAC every 4 years and then expect them to take you as seriously as people who are committed to the platform of the Democratic Party for years and years and years and years. And yes, it may be your only option, but then maybe run in Vermont as a Democrat and be recognized as the most left-leaning member of the Democratic Party instead of sort of an ideological carpetbagger every 4 years, and then get confused when people who have been running as Democrats and trying to help other Democrats get elected aren't favorable to just letting you take the joint over. Because the Republicans let that happen with Donald Trump, and look how well that worked out. The other difference is that statistically across the country, as popular as some of the ideas that Bernie himself wants, and most of the time the popularity is around the, again, 70% of people poll that they support Medicare for all. Those same people also, according to the same polling, don't know that Medicare for all means the elimination of private security or insurance. It means getting rid of it. When you tell them it does, which it would, the support drops to almost 30%. However, single payer, which everybody blames there were 12 blue dogs that kept that out of, that had big insurance states, kept that out of the ACA. They were the turning point in those votes. that specific element of having a single payer system that competes with private insurance. So you have a choice, just like you have public school, private school. You have cops and you have private security. You have state universities and you have private universities. We understand that in the United States. That's something people can wrap their heads around. Polls at 90%. 90%. The Biden-Clinton idea of how to move this forward. And by the way, that's your way of eventually getting to a state-run system in the United States without having to have a war bomb you back to the Stone Age like the Brits did. The NIH, the NHS, the National Health Service in England, largely started because the country had been leveled. It wasn't something that
Literally.
they didn't make a political shift instantly. They had nothing. The hospitals were bombed. They had to, it was like their own internal Marshall Plan to rebuild healthcare in the country because it was gone. So they started from scratch with a no functioning system. I mean, they were triaging people in tents where buildings used to be. If you're not in that situation, get used to the idea that the incremental change is your pathway. And the British system, would have had, over time, it's been incrementally improved upon since that initial system. Because everything you create needs tweaks. It needs constant gardening. You weed it and you fertilize it and you water it. That's a constant process. That's what responsible governance is. And when you have a situation where you have the opportunity to get a win on the board, you take it. And if, in our case currently right now, with 48, and I don't mean minus Manchin and Sinema. Every time I say this, people go, yeah, because Manchin and Sinema aren't real Democrats. I mean 48 elected Democrats. We have 48. The American voting populace, the voters of America, have decided that 48 Democrats, 2 independents, and 50 Republicans elected in office are the balance that they chose. And that wasn't just Republicans seizing back space. That was Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters, and arguably the slacktivist class ceding territory, saying I'm so upset about, if I can't get everything, nobody gets anything, therefore let them have it. And what we saw this week, and there was sort of a blessing in the awful this week, is that they were so emboldened that Clarence Thomas literally wrote in his opinion that all due process arguments that have been previously put forward that are on the same basis as Roe v. Wade are all up for grabs.
Neat. That's so cool.
Yep. And acting like, well, the Democrats and the Republicans are two legs in the same pair of pants. They're, it's a uniparty system. There's no real choice in America. When you look at who Biden has put on the Supreme Court, when you look at who Obama has put on the Supreme Court, and when you look at who Trump has put on the Supreme Court, and you look at who Bush put on the Supreme Court, and they intend to going forward. There is no situation where the next Republican president, be it Trump or DeSantis, Trump's not going to run, but DeSantis or somebody of his ilk, that the next one, even if they run as a more moderating voice than Trump, puts someone less conservative than Amy Coney Barrett on the court. She is now the gold standard, so much so that Clarence Thomas, when he finally speaks, after years of silence and standing in Scalia's shadow and being just kind of like a rubber stamp, when he
years and years, decades.
Yes, right. When he finally lets his freak flag fly, He's arguing stuff she wouldn't have had the guts to bring up even when she was an activist before she was on the list to be on the Supreme Court. There is no version of the future where until the Republican Party are a whisper of who they used to be, a sideline, minuscule minority party of lunatics that only charts on school boards and the occasional mayor, where there is no future where that until that happens, where Democratic voters or Democratic leaning voters or progressive or liberals can afford to not vote for the Democrat that's capable of winning in the race. Period. End of story. You have to, because we have taken too many wins for granted. That was the lesson this week. That we as Democratic voters, it's not Obama's fault. It's not Al Gore's fault for being too wooden. It's our fault. We ceded that territory by having a privileged view of our position and taking the civil rights wins that the Democrats are almost solely responsible for creating and saying, that was 5 minutes ago. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Vote.org, folks. Share that link and share it often. Vote.org. Register and make sure you're registered and make sure your friends are registered. We'll be back.
Hal, I'm going to restart and see if that helps my...
Your gloss? Okay.
My gloss, yeah.
All right. Cool.
I'll be back.
Okay. We're going to have to... I think we're going to have to send Johnny a production package eventually as well, patrons. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to do a. I'm gonna, like, once Cam's back in school, and I'm gonna have to do a couple of like 24-hour fundraiser streams to catch up. I think the blurriness is cool. He'll be back in just a second. He's gone but not forgotten. Our dear Johnny Million. Crowdfund for Johnny Million, right? Yeah, it's 3D Tech. I think it's his camera setting. It might be one of those things where, like, because this has a, like, I have autofocus turned off on this guy, but like the other webcam that I have, if I put my hand up and then pull it back like this, it'll trigger the autofocus and get it back to normal. I think that might be it, because sometimes when you're doing this, the camera gets freaked out and focuses on your hand. Let's see, Heather, if people didn't show in 2016 when there was an open conservative seat, that change alone would have changed the 5-4 decision against Roe. Absolutely, Heather. Right. That's exactly my point. They were holding this seat. We were warned. They were holding Merrick Garland's seat. We'll let the next president decide it because they thought they were going to win. And they were doing everything they could to do it. I showed you guys that article on my live stream of some of the smartest progressives I know are voting for Trump over Clinton. Pfft. Yeah, how they feel now. Right, Pamela? Yeah, as was I. I was yelling at everyone I could reach that it was about the Supreme Court stupid. Yeah.
Coming back in 20.
Thank you. Russian Trump bots helped, no question. Also, Mark Simon says, stay positive, good will prevail, the truth always bubbles up. I agree. Because one of the things you have to understand, that demoralizing moments tend to undermine your ability not only to push back because exhaustion does that. Well, I'll talk about this in a minute.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the HAL Sparks radio program, MEGAWORLDWIDE.
Oh my God! They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
It's
now
true.
Let's get back with HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. Johnny Million is restarting his setup at home. He'll be joining us in just a second. He was a little blurry, and I have to say our chat room likes to see him in crisp, fine detail. They like the cut of his jib. I'm just saying. One of the things our chat room is alive with this conversation, of course, and there's all kinds of conversations that we're hearing from pack the court to the idea that there needs to be that alone, that primary one. There's a myriad of solutions. People are looking for an immediate one. And it's frustrating to me because my reaction is the only reason you are like killing the filibuster. The only reason you are clamoring for a radical change to the Supreme Court and its makeup right now is because of the abdication of responsibility that occurred in 2016. Had we taken seriously when Donald Trump said there has to be some kind of punishment for the woman, he said that during the 2016 election cycle in May of 2016, during the Republican primaries. He said it. Chris Matthews asked him again and again, does that mean there has to be a punishment for the woman? He said yes. And a huge, an enormous number of people who at parties call themselves feminists or gay rights supporters, progressive, a genuinely significant number of those people said, you know what? I'd rather have him pick who fills the seat, RBG's seat, than her. A statistically and election-changing significant number of people decided that it was at best a coin flip, and at worst it was better if he did it because it would collapse the system. That was the Susan Sarandon argument, which our dear friends at TYT sold for months until a couple of months before the election when it looked like, oh my gosh, there's a chance this guy could win, and started backpedaling. And their own viewers turned on them because you can't tell people someone's a warmongering danger to society and will destroy us all and is the most evil baby-eating monster in the world. And then 6 weeks before go, you know that guy you see on TV? She's better than him. Doesn't work. And it's what happens when you are serious about the long-term impacts of positive, of negative changes in the judiciary and who you let in charge of your country. That, to me, is one of the most infuriating aspects of the 2016 cycle and what's going on this week. Because this die was cast then. And again, we can blame Republicans for this. We can even blame, blue dogs who are no longer in office, and we can blame, variance in, politically, Jimmy Carter for being boring, or Bill Clinton for terming out, or Al Gore for being wooden, or Obama for not doing enough. Which, by the way, is code the Republicans take as you guys never really liked him. That it was just about electing a black man and you didn't care about what he was trying to accomplish, including the ACA. It's why they felt comfortable attacking it. When they would do polling about the ACA, when it was unpopular, it is now popular. It is now in the positive. When they would do polling about that, and it trended negative, half the negative was people who wished it had gone further, but weren't against it. Half of the people, there's Johnny, he's back with us, and he's bright and shiny, and we see him. We can see the glint off his dome. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Is it a little better?
Yeah, it's way better. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not as good as mine, but then, I spend all day tweaking my camera sometimes, so I'm a maniac. A vain maniac, I might add. Huh?
Are we on the air?
Oh, yes, we are. We're live and running. So I was just making the point that when voters decided that the ACA should have gone further, and when they were polled about it, said, "Do you approve of the ACA?" Instead of saying yes, but the polls that were there, "Do you approve of the ACA?" A lot of the people who said no were saying no because they wanted more. They didn't think it went far enough, which is very different from being against its existence. But that didn't matter. It put it underwater because people didn't go, "Yes, I'm supportive of it. I'm fighting for more." And when the poll doesn't let you say why you don't approve of it, and that it's because you think it should go further, checking no is a signal to the Republicans that not only either one or the other, either you are on their side. See, even liberals and progressives don't like this bill, or that you just don't care enough to fight for the rest of it. And that's exactly what happened. And it muted Obama's numbers in the second round. It built this storyline that, Obama wasn't that great, and he didn't, sure, he got 24 million people insurance, and he kept kids on their insurance till they were 27, which saved innumerable lives and bankruptcies and the like. But it wasn't enough, so the hell with him. Let's give Donald Trump a try. A man who was on tape on Access Hollywood admitting to repeated sexual assault and a cavalier attitude towards it, where he thought he had the right to do it to any woman he met that he felt like touching. He could just do it. And people were like, all right, that guy. Hillary Clinton was to the left of Bernie Sanders on guns. She was, for all practical purposes, in the primary and everything. And this has to do with the fact that Bernie's an independent who comes from a relatively rural state. Vermont has a lot of woods and a much friendlier gun culture than New York, where people are elbow to elbow and having some idiot at Sbarro drop his handgun and shoot you through the kneecap because he feels, afraid that he won't be able to get his fry order taken seriously unless he's waving a peace, is a concern. And so there are different attitudes in different parts of the country. And so I think Bernie, she has an F and Bernie has a D minus, like that kind of thing. But the choices Hillary Clinton would have made about these kind of issues, you have to recognize, and not like Bernie would have made any huge difference in this, but like he would have been less so,
right,
that much. But she was, obviously and forthright about her desire to do certain kinds of gun safety measures. That was 1,600 mass shootings ago. How many lives would have been saved if the number of people who believe in comprehensive background, universal background checks and an assault weapons ban and all those things, vast majority of people, huge majority of people, had voted that way for real, instead of flipping a coin and just going, we've seen what the Democrats do. Let's see what the Republicans can do. There's really no difference. It's really just a personality fight. I don't like Al Gore. I think George Bush seems more colloquial, and his dad wasn't too terrible because he was drummed out in one term. There, and as a Hillary voter, because I'm, in 2016, because I am sane and would like the world to be here for my grandchildren and my grandchildren's grandchildren. When I was at Politico, and a well-known progressive talker who was also there found out that I was supporting Hillary in the election because I thought she had a real chance of getting elected, and she did indeed win the popular vote. This person refused to talk to me the rest of the time we're there. By the way, they were talking to Ann Coulter. They were talking to Glenn Beck. They were talking to Robert Davi, who was there as a Trump supporter. Chit-chatting away. But because I was just frankly saying I was going to, I would vote for the nominee, whoever it was on the Democratic Party. Bernie had won the nomination hands down. No question. Yeah, of course. But the very fact that they found out this person, who's, by the way, there's a clip of this person being shared all over the internet, being very angry about the ruling this week and how somehow, this is Christianity is to blame, right? That's people who have Twitter will know what I'm talking about. That very person thought it was worse that I was supporting Clinton than someone else was supporting Trump, that I was more of an enemy. And I don't mean just because you're going to ruin it for us, but genuinely, almost Q-level hatred where, Hillary's not just a politician that you don't think goes far enough. She was a baby eater, probably in a secret lesbian relationship, and her husband,
How many times did you and I talk about that, Hal?
Well, and you never convinced me.
I've got the videotapes.
I'm sorry, but you doodling what you think it would look like on the corner of a notebook, and then creating
one of those,
creating a flip book of cartoon is not going to. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Anyways, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. This is the position we find ourselves in, and this is the position that Clarence Thomas has warned us. Mm-hmm. The writing is on the wall. There is no, both siderism. Both siderism is dead.
That kills me.
And anybody who sells it is selling for the Clarence Thomas argument, for Donald Trump's next presidency, for Matt Gaetz, for MTG. Period. End of story. It's crazy. Or they simply don't care and they make a living arguing. So they want arguments to be the word of the day, so that as long as people are freaking out, they'll always have a buck to be made. We'll be back. Mm-hmm. There we go. So the question is, what right-wing propaganda campaigns is Putin going to hatch for 2022 and 24? They're coming. We all know it. Must be ready for them. Well, Nevitz Forever, it's a fascinating thing because there was the people on Channel 1, the Russian show, Johnny, do you follow Julie Davis on Twitter?
No.
She's the Russian Media Monitor site. She watches their show and then she translates it. I'll retweet her to you.
I am getting there now.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Just look up search Russian Media Monitor, and it'll be the first one that comes up. Julie Davis. Julia Davis. And her thing is Julia Davis News. She's been sanctioned by the Russian government because she keeps posting translations of their shows.
Got her.
Yeah.
Coming back in 20.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the HAL Sparks Show. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the HAL Sparks Show. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Welcome back. it's there's been a lot of issues, I suppose, and we'll get into some of the stuff that's happening with Putin and Russia. I think Philip Bittner's going to be joining us from Ukraine in the next hour. But not taking threats seriously because you enjoy a level of comfort, or you are busied by discomfort that on a scale, compared to, the millions that are going to be starving to death because Russia is blowing up grain silos and stealing grain and letting it putrefy on purpose. It's a different chart. It just is. Not saying your problems aren't real. I'm just saying on a scale, they have to be taken in context, in that reality. It's like the Republicans who are like filming empty shelves at grocery stores and then it's one segment where one particular product, there's been a run on it, and then you back up and the shelves are just stacked with food and everything's on sale right now because the stores have too much inventory, so they're cutting prices. And Powell's, the Fed's going to go, look, we brought prices down. Like, no, you didn't. They bought too much stuff and they're doing sales. That's different. It's that's another conversation for another time. But the reality is what what's the biggest problem I see in the conversation amongst Democrats going into the fall, besides the fact that a good portion of liberal and progressive allies of the Democratic Party, what would be like progressive independents or whatever that group is, take wholly for granted all the civil rights gains that the Democrats have been soldiering on for decades, all the economic gains that the Democrats have been soldiering, like reinforcing unions. I mean, literally, Biden is running on being the most union-friendly president in the last 80 years. And we've seen more union progress from Amazon to Starbucks to just the general support of our regular unions, United Auto Workers, all these groups, more support for them and more political clout being recognized from them than we've seen in years. But what have you done for me lately? First bipartisan gun legislation passed in 30 years. The Violence Against Women Act had to be renewed after we got 48 votes in the Senate because we needed that tipping point. We needed the ability to have that balance point to get enough Republicans on board just to do something that had been law since the 90s. But then look at who that party is and is willing to become. Because why would you worry about the Violence Against Women Act when you're actively collaborating in violence against women by not caring if they die from an ectopic pregnancy or rape and incest? If you don't care about that area, why would I? Of course, you're not going to pass the Violence Against Women Act. We think they're going to codify the ERA ever? Democrats want to do it. Almost to the person, right? Democrats, have been actively moving towards even the goals of the ERA, even without its ratification, since it was crafted in the 70s. And Republicans have been working against it. So much so that their own party, when they put up Sarah Palin, she had a 70% likability rating amongst Republicans and a 20% electability rating. We like ladies. They just shouldn't run anything.
What kills me right now is the argument that the both sides argument where they say Democrats are equally as responsible because they didn't codify this into law when they had the chance.
Well,
here's bonkers.
Well, first of all, we haven't had in that time more than 58 Democrats. We never crossed the 60 threshold, which would have protected us against a pro-life hyper conservative being able to filibuster it. The other thing is that we operated as, in many ways, again, and as this is settled law, and it became a point of every time somebody sits in front of the Judiciary Committee to end up on the SCOTUS, this was part of the conversation. Do you believe it's settled law? Yeah, I do.
I would say yes, and you can't tell that I'm lying.
That's right. And by the time you do, it's too late. Yeah. Now, and this is the thing. This is the difference about the Trump presidency versus just the long game of the Republicans. He was able to make up for lost time, because if they had to do this over time, if they had somebody if they had put up if Clarence Thomas hadn't kept his mouth shut all this time, and they had put in Kavanaugh or somebody like them during Bush, and to chip away at this point, that were really the hardliners about this. Their writings around this, unless they were effectively really being undercover about this, if they wrote their genuine political opinions about these things, they would have written something like Clarence Thomas wrote like this years ago. They would have written it in the early 2000s. Scalia, by the way, arguably is the person who kept them from writing it to keep them on path so that they wouldn't sort of be called out for this. But the Trump presidency in 4 years added 3 judges, all of whom lied. And the expectation is, well, they're yes, we don't like him, and yes, but we can't leave the Supreme Court. We're not going to do what Mitch McConnell did. We're going to play fair because you need a functioning government, because we actually care. Democrats actually care about the ramifications of this. It's really easy. If you're Vladimir Putin, you don't have to care if people starve to death. You don't.
No.
Everybody else has to play on sort of a level playing field, because you're trying to save as many innocent lives as you can, even in context of war. But if you're on the other side and you don't care, all's fair in love and war, or hate and violence. And the fact that Donald Trump was put in a position where he was able to replace 3 in succession, and none of them had to give a ruling over the course of like 6 or 8 years that would have cued people to like, here it comes. It kept those triggers from being known until it was too late. Effectively, it was a snap trap. And here's Philip Ittner joining us. He'll join us at the top of the next hour. And this goes towards what women's rights were on the ballot in 2016, and a significant number of Democratic-leaning independents, of radical progressives, and malaised, laissez-faire Democratic voters shrugged off women's rights. He told you what he was going to do. He in the Access Hollywood tape and the Chris Matthews interview, Donald Trump told you his standard for women's rights in the world. And the response was, I'll show him by not voting for that woman. That was the response. And again, that's why I put it 100% on us. That's on us. It's okay, fool me once, won't get fooled again. It's okay to go, we thought they were playing fair for a period of time. That illusion is stripped away. When Donald Trump is celebrating the Matt Gaetz and the MTGs and the Lauren Boeberts of his party, and viewing the John Kasichs as an enemy, and trying to broom out anybody who voted for him, will vote for him again more than likely, but didn't defend his big lie or voted against him in the impeachment because they thought it was a bridge too far. He's told you who he is. And this week, Clarence Thomas told you the future of the Republican judiciary choices on federal benches, on the appeals courts, and all the way up to the Supreme Court, because it's not about just SCOTUS. Clarence Thomas has told you this. Contraception, same-sex relationships which means being fired for being gay, has to be back on the table, according to Clarence Thomas. And they have the means to do it. And if they get another inch, they're going to take it. And if you give them that inch, you are signing off on those changes. You're saying, I agree. Same-sex marriage, gone. Relationships, gone. Contraception, gone. Women's right to choose, gone. And you're fine with that. I'm not. I hope you're not. Vote.org. We'll be back after the news with our dear friend Philip Bittner, who will be talking to us from Ukraine, where Operation Boomerang of the Russians is in full effect. It's fascinating. I'll tell you about it in a second.
Pew, pew.
Pew, pew. All right, let me see. Here's our 3 up. Philip, you'll be joining us. There he is.
Hey,
Philip. Hey-o.
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 How's things?
You know.
Over here.
Yeah.
Here. Oh, hi.
You know, it's America. We're humping.
I couldn't believe it.
I can. I mean, like I said,
I can.
like that's what we were all. I mean, I was at the Women's March when in January of 2017. We were there in D.C. There were millions of women. There were hundreds of thousands, if not a million plus women in the streets about this. They were right.
Yep.
Those women, like deserve respect and an apology for people who either dismissed them or derided them as being quote unquote hysterical, which of course is a word that comes from hysterectomy, which is, like that in and of itself is, brutally and adorably sexist.
Well,
now,
I mean, Hillary's failed bid for president was filled with misogyny, absolutely filled with misogyny.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, I mean, none of us should be surprised, sadly.
Mm-hmm. Right. No. And I will be surprised if it happens again. I do think this might be just enough to light a fire under the ass of voters again, to recognize that all they got to do is do what they did in 2020 again. And if you do it for 3 cycles in a row, none of this shit has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to be. I changed my I own property in Michigan. Mm-hmm. My family, I inherited it, and I switched from California to Michigan because I felt my vote could have more influence. So for that very reason, so I'll be casting my ballot in
as a Michigander, right?
Rural Michigan,
which, by the way,
in San Francisco.
Has a much higher prevalence of Democratic voters. I mean, that's why Whitmer got elected.
Michigan. I love Michigan so much. It's such a great state, but it's this balance. I mean, that is the true definition of a purple state.
Yeah,
there's common sense Democrats, and then there are the nut jobs.
Right.
That I grew up with. I grew up with them. I grew up, talking to the guys that live their entire life and die within about a 20-mile radius, and bless their hearts. But my tolerance for them is about gone. So I'm it's
and Universe Observer. I do. I'm just answering somebody in the chat. I do. I vote every time. I have been in multiple marches, both against the Iraq War. I was in the Women's March, like I said, when Trump got elected. I pushed very hard for people to vote Democratic in that, and I gave a friend of mine a ride to the voting booth. In 26, 18, in the midterm. Obviously, we all voted from home during COVID. And I will be doing that again this time.
Yep. Yeah, I've got my ballot.
Yep. So.
Yep. No, I'll be voting in person. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I'll
come back for it. That's great.
I'll go cast my ballot in person.
Right. So. So, anyways, did you see the first of all, the HIMARS have started arriving.
Yep.
Which is something I want to talk about. Also, did you see the boomerang shot?
Yes, I did. And I thought it was artificial until I've now seen two different angles of it. Angles of it. And I was like, that really did happen. Those stupid idiots.
Yeah, the theory is, the prevalent theory right now is that they forgot to turn off their radar ping, which identifies them as like a Ukrainian aircraft or something. Like it's a ghost thing that you do to kind of draw the planes in. Like, oh, there's another one of us nearby. I feel safe near that. So you draw a plane near you and then you hit it or something. And they forgot to turn it off because you're supposed to right before you fire. And they left it on, and the missile just flew up and went right back and hit the. Yeah. You see that, Johnny Million? I posted it on my Twitter. Thank you.
Okay. See ya.
Yeah, it's a. Let's see. I'll try and.
Yeah, it's. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, but that would make sense that it one of the missiles goes up, and then goes, oh, there's something to target.
Yeah,
comes right down back.
Yeah, it's a ghost. Right, here we go.
You're listening to the HAL SPARKS radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They're very.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Bringing Chicago's audio up.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. We are, of course, live streaming at infotainmentwars.com. Who needs documents when you have the memories? We're very excited. There's a Mike Pillow movie coming up that I will be breaking down sentence by sentence, lie by lie in the next, in like 2 weeks. It's always 2 weeks away, but it's supposed to be coming up soon.
What's
and then,
it called? Do you know what it's called?
I don't, absolute doof. It's got the word absolute in it, like every time, but we're going to be covering that on my show, just like we did 2,000 Mules. No word yet on my debate with Dinesh D'Souza. He's still chickening out. The last we heard was he would have a lively discussion that he could edit, and I don't know. We're going to do it live and live stream it or not. I don't do it. And then, of course, like and subscribe to the show. Help out the show by being a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/HalSparks, or go to twitch.tv/HalSparks if you got one of the youngins in the house and they have one of those accounts, and subscribe. Helps us out a lot. And if you can't afford to help out because times are tight, don't worry about it. Just listen, enjoy. Hopefully, we will alleviate some of the pressure in your life, get you motivated, and keep you from being in balling up in fetal position and anxiety, and being productive as someone who actually cares about the issues that we talk about. Joining us right now is Philip Ittner, our dear friend who is in Ukraine. And he's still in Odessa. He's still in the Black Sea, rubbing it in.
Yeah, for those of you watching, I'll let the camera get a little.
There it is.
There's the Black Sea for you.
It's, of course, gorgeous and possibly full of mines. So it's a
say what you will about America. We do not have too many landmines.
We've solved that a bit. By the way, the Ukrainian military announced this week that they have received 2 Boston Dynamics dogs that are helping with mine removal. They walk along, and they, instead of losing Patron, our dear little friend, for those of you who don't know, there's a Ukrainian bomb-sniffing dog. He's adorable. He looks like the dog from Frasier, and with a little
Boston Terrier.
He's a little Boston Terrier with a bomb vest on, and he's great at it, and he's a national hero because every mine or bomb or unexploded munition he finds is some kid not stepping on something and dying from it later. It's a wonderful thing, especially as they clear Bucha and other places. But the future is really in not endangering dogs, real live dogs, and sending these Boston Dynamics crawlers out to scan the ground. And so the first 2 have arrived in Ukraine, and they are doing that in Bucha and around Kiev and the areas that have been, liberated over time.
Robot dogs?
Yeah, they're
and you can also buy little stuffed animals of
support.
Patron.
Yes,
Patron. To support the army, you can buy your very own Patron stuffed
plushie.
animal. Okay, yes, it's a Jack Russell. Okay, all right.
Sorry, yes, it's a Jack Russell Terrier. That's right. Everybody's correcting, yeah. But it's I'll post the link on it.
Get your dog breed wrong.
This is right. Yes,
Yeah,
of all the details.
Zarat is asking what they do about mime removal. Like, are they really doing it? Are
they put them in a box, a big old invisible box.
Right. They did you see? I'm sure you saw this footage early on where the Russians had laid mines across one of the roads, and one of the Ukrainian soldiers was just shuffling it with his foot because the triggers because here's the thing. This goes to the kind of idiocy of the Russian planning, is that those are the kind that have to be buried because you have to step on them to set them off. The rest of the body of it doesn't matter. It's got a trigger mechanism on the very top. It's a pressure thing. As long as you don't touch the top, nothing happens.
Those particular mines from that footage, those were anti-vehicle mines. Those you can't. You need to roll over those with something
significant pressure.
Several hundred.
You don't want to waste them on white-tailed deer. You don't want to waste them on white-tailed deer. You want them to actually go off when it's a truck. And so these guys were just brushing them with their foot right out of the road. Just, amazing to watch in general. Okay, well, let's start off with just we know we're going to have questions from our chat room. For Philip at infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/HalSparks, or even on the Facebook page if you want to throw up some questions. Johnny Million will be farming questions for us for Philip while he's there. But Philip, give us your sort of assessment of the last week, of what's going on there and any kind of changes that you've seen.
Well, okay, so we mentioned the HIMARS having arrived, and we've already seen them in action overnight. At least 4 are in country. We also know that there are German artillery systems that have arrived. They're also going to be handy and useful in what is, in essence, an artillery duel. Sadly, however, bad news on the Ukrainian side of things is that it does look like they're gonna lose Severodonetsk. They're gonna have to withdraw from there and go across the river. They've been defending it for so long, and I spoke to somebody within the last 24 hours or so, and we were kind of talking about what that tactic was, and in a lot of ways, it was kind of like he referred to it as kind of Ali's rope-a-dope technique of kind of just like pinning, letting them crash against your defenses in Severodonetsk and keep them occupied, have them expend as much as they possibly can, and then pull back, and hopefully you will have consumed enough of their minute material and taken up enough time for the weaponry that they're expecting from the West to get in place. Yeah. And then eventually there will be a counteroffensive. I mean, there is a counteroffensive going on in Kherson. Right. And they're making slow progress, the Ukrainians, down in Kherson. And that's really strategically important because that's where the water canal, just outside of Kherson itself, is where the water canal that supplies the fresh water to the Crimean Peninsula, which so much of this war is all about the Crimean Peninsula. Mm-hmm. The Kherson Canal, it's called the North Crimea Canal or the Kherson Canal. And so the Ukrainians are pushing back in Kherson already, but the real counteroffensive has not started yet. And when that does, it's going to be quite something to watch. Mm-hmm.
I would say,
I think they're going to take a lot of territory back.
I agree. I think the Severodonetsk is a more articulated version of what was really happening at the steel plant and when they were just taking artillery, and they held it as long as they could, not so much because they thought they could maintain it because of the size of the Russian force. It was always going to be one of those things they were going to have to give up at a certain point. But by holding it as long as they did, they distracted the Russian forces down there, made it look like a bigger deal than it was, made it an ego point for the Russians, and they sent all those materials down there. They have done the exact same thing in Severodonetsk and pulled forces away from Kherson, which is strategically more important and more valuable for the civilian population. Even there, they've been able to move out most of the civilians from Severodonetsk and get them safe and blown up the bridges so that coming across is even harder. This is old World War II level, front fighting. The difference is that they held them there long enough. They distracted them up in the north, and now with the HIMARS being available, there was a video I saw from sort of comparing the missile systems of the Russians versus the HIMARS systems that were coming in that are being used right now. They showed specific targeting, and they were showing the kind of phosphorus cluster bomb droppage from the Republicans, just kind of peppering an entire roadway area near a city, just little hits all over the place. None of it strategically significant, but all of it just to make it impossible for people to breathe. Basically just killing people, indiscriminately in an entire range. Meanwhile, the HIMARS is targeted by a drone system, and they are able to hit buildings singularly without even destroying the building next door. And that level of precision is especially necessary for the Ukrainians because they want these cities back one day and they'd rather not level them. The Russians don't care. The Russians, like, if we have to start from scratch, it'll keep our people busy for a few years while we build these cities up from, with the sewer pipes still exist, but everything else we can just make our own. And that distinction between the targeting, both about the civilian population, about the care and thought put into the war, is very distinctly different between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Did you hear, by the way, Philip? Before we get into the chat farmed questions, did you hear about the trucks full of Belarusian ammo? Apparently, Russia has put over. I want to say somewhere in the order of like 10 trucks were seen leaving at this one particular area, just loading up ammunition from Belarus and moving it out, taking it either back to Russia or into Ukraine later to be Russia. And it is making the people in Minsk very nervous that this might be them thinking that Lukashenko is not sufficiently loyal to Putin, and therefore they're basically disarming them right now.
I've heard a lot of things coming out of Belarus recently, and a lot of reasons to have concern over there, not least of which the maneuvers that they were going on, these reports of ammo being moved around. Mm-hmm. But Lukashenko, again, is in a no-win situation when it comes to this war because he can't send his troops over. He can be used as a staging area for Russian troops, but he can't send Belarusian troops over because he needs them at home to put down his own people because he's got a major opposition. That the same troops that would be used to put down an uprising, if they get sent into Ukraine, well then he's got an uprising in the rear of his forces. So he's in a no-win situation when it comes to deploying any troops or getting directly involved in this war.
Right.
And also, in addition to that, there's not a lot for them to go for out in the West. I mean, there's a town called Lutsk that he could strike towards in an effort to then move on towards Lviv. Mm-hmm. But the second he does that, Lviv is a huge reserve point. Right. So that's where they pull their soldiers. When they need to pull their soldiers off the line, a lot of them get sent to Lviv. So it's not like it's defenseless. And they'd see it coming a mile off, they'd see it coming miles off, and they would fortify Lviv. But strategically, it makes very little sense, except unless he's trying to cut them off from Poland. And even that isn't going to work because there's still a massive border with Poland, with Romania.
Right.
It's too porous for them to try and stop.
They've been talking on Channel 1 on the that Russian 60-minute show this week about how the Ukrainians have to worry that that Poland is going to invade them. That Poland has dreams of making Ukraine a puppet state, and therefore, so clearly their idea of cutting them off isn't going to work. So I guess this would be the soft power version of this. If they can physically do it and make the Ukrainians distrustful of the Poles, which is just like goofy 1940s garbage.
Yeah, no, they're playing what that stuff is they're trying to play on old hostilities between Poles and Ukrainians.
Right.
It's not going to work.
No,
it's not going to work. It's 20th century, early 20th
it's
century,
mid-century nonsense.
It's bull.
But they're saying it like it's serious. They are. I mean, you and I both are like, what the hell? Most people look at it. Yeah. We're like, what are you talking about? And yet they're talking about this like it's a serious thing. Like and again, they also talked about Trump like he was a serious candidate. Part of this might be manipulative. The entire point is you pretend they're, allegedly really good at pretending they believe certain things. But good Lord.
Yeah, no, it's delusional. It's absolutely 100% delusional, and it also betrays their lack of understanding of Ukraine, of Poland. They live
humanity,
They live in a world where everything stopped in kind of 1991 in the fall of the Soviet Union, and they don't understand that things have actually progressed and moved on. So it's depressing to know that they're that deluded and that they're either deluding themselves or they're really that out of touch with the reality on the European continent.
Yeah. And again, perhaps this, to kind of look at this from their own reactionary response, perhaps this has something to do with, I don't know, we have to. I think I blazed past the break, so we need to take a quick break, real quick, so we can come back for a little short thing. We're gonna there's so much to talk about. Philip Ittner is with us. Follow him at Philip Ittner, 1 L in Philip, 2 T's in Ittner on Twitter, and of course, he's growing his vlog on YouTube. That's you'll find links on his Twitter feed and on mine to take you there, and you can subscribe. We'll be back right after this. That it's so. I've been live streaming about some of these things. It's so sometimes it's hard to adapt to commercial breaks. Sorry, Chicago. Good Lord. But did you see so Trump made fun of Biden for falling off his bike, and Channel One's response was to make fun of Donald Trump. That in and of itself is it's an amazing turn of events. They have moved on. They are lining up behind.
They've always mocked Trump, though. They've always mocked Trump because they've always known that he was
a chaos agent.
Stooge.
Yeah,
he's a chaos agent, and he was their guy in the White House, basically. And they knew that he was an idiot. He was a useful idiot, basically. Yeah. So all of this talk by the Trumpists about how Putin totally respects Trump and that this would never happen if Trump was still in power. Well, I mean, firstly, this wouldn't have to happen because Trump would have turned a blind eye to it and let the Russians just march right in. He wouldn't have gone unified NATO like Biden has.
Not at all. There'd be no military support.
Weapons and
they wouldn't have had
no support.
If he had his way, they wouldn't have had the javelins. He would have jumped past that point in the budget where they would have had to re-vote on it, and they already knew that there were a bunch of Republicans who were going to pull that back. A failed plan is not a sign of innocence. And we were just talking during the break that Trump's whole thing that Putin would have done this if I was in office, guaranteed 100%. Well, first of all, it's easy to do when you've been voted out of office. You can say whatever. You can say gas prices never would have gone up. You can say that there would have never been another pandemic, that masks were something. You can make up any of that stuff because who's to say, right? You could just say that. Only your followers need to believe it. Nobody else takes it seriously. But in terms of where we are with Ukraine, we were just talking about how, Philip, that Trump was like, this wouldn't have happened. Well, yeah, he wouldn't have had to invade. You would have just handed it to him. They would have taken Kiev in 2 days because they wouldn't have even had the javelins he was holding back when he was trying to manipulate Zelensky into doing this press conference for him against Joe Biden within weeks of the presidency to try and re-Comey the election, like the Comey interview or the Comey press conference about Hillary Clinton's emails absolutely statistically played a part in Trump's win in 2016. Absolutely, a 2%, it was enough of a shift that helped a lot. But He thought it was way bigger a part of his win than it was. And he's always trying to recreate it, both with Zelensky then, with the Hunter Biden laptop nonsense, and then ultimately, with Raffensperger and everybody in Georgia saying, look, just go out and say that it's corrupt and we'll take care of it. This came out this week in the January 6th committee. Just say it. And then because people believe to some degree, if you say it out loud and strongly enough, that it must be somewhat true, and that amount of doubt will let you slip in the door. That'll give you room to muscle past. That'll be enough of a dodge or a distraction to get you through. And Russia's, on a giant scale,
it's been a big week for Russia when it comes to Americans on bicycles. Nice segue there. Because did you see what the naval attaché in Moscow was up to this week?
He rode up on his bike.
So the naval attaché was out bike riding and apparently came across a Z symbol on a lamppost and decided it would be a smart thing to do to take out his cell phone and to take a picture of him flipping the bird at the Z. He should have known better. He took a shot of his finger at the Z on a lamppost. He should have known better. There are cameras everywhere. In Moscow. Everywhere. And of course they filmed it, and it was just red meat for the Russians. They went absolutely ballistic. There was a member of the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament, who was openly calling for this guy to be accosted in the streets. It's just... They went absolutely ballistic.
Dear God, Philip, what if a naval attaché from the United States on his bicycle can give the finger to the Z? What will the Russian people think they're allowed to do going forward? You know what I mean? Like, I got news for you. In the United States, you can roll up to any sign and take a selfie of yourself giving it the finger. From Donald Trump to Joe Biden, you can even if you put a sticker on a pump that says I did that with Joe Biden, you're a jerk, but you're not going to jail.
Nope, that's the freedom of speech.
Yeah, that's the part.
I don't know how much we would appreciate a Russian attaché, urinating on the American flag. I don't think we would.
That's a step further. No, that's a step further.
That's how they're responding to it, though.
Right.
That's how they're. But it also does show that, like, when they were flipping out about it so much, they were saying, like, how dare he insult our great military and our army, and how disrespectful that is when our men are out there fighting the good fight and dying, and all this kind of stuff. Which, okay, I can understand the mentality, but at the same
you could always bring them home.
Yeah, here's a solution: bring them home.
All of them, get them out of there. Even the Wagner, like, maybe I tell you what. Yeah, we'll just say he wasn't giving the finger to the Russian conscripts, the ones who are being forced to fight. He was giving the finger to the Wagner group.
Yeah.
So
there are a lot of Russians who do not like what's going on. I saw footage just recently within the last 36, 48 hours of them somewhere out east. I want to say it was Ekaterinburg, maybe further east, of them Russians Molotov cocktailing an army recruitment office.
Whoa.
Taking Molotov cocktails and filming themselves doing this. Okay. And at least two young men chucking Molotov cocktails through the windows of an army recruitment office and filming it. All right. So things are not going well within their own population. And that's in addition to the very real sabotage that we're seeing. There was a hydroelectric plant out near Lake Baikal in Irkutsk that, again, spontaneously decided to explode.
Right.
It's happening with increasing regularity. And I'm telling you, I was speaking to a Russian friend of mine who couldn't take it anymore, and she decided to go to Turkey. And she was in Turkey, and we were talking to one another, and she felt a little bit more at ease to talk now that she was out of Russia. And she was openly saying to me, no, we all hate this. Everybody of a certain age, we all hate this. We're all against it. We're all really furious at Putin. not only because they're just ethically against the war, which I think a lot of them are, but they're also realizing that this is going to destroy their future. If you're in your 20s or your 30s, your
country's done. Let's take a real break, and then we'll come back after this, and we're going to have questions from the chat room at infotainmentwars.com. Like and subscribe today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us out a lot. And if you're a troll, thank you for stopping by. You spread us out through the algorithm in a way we couldn't do ourselves. You're adorable. We'll be back right after this.
I don't know if somebody's trolling me even saying I should go to Russia. I've been to Russia. I lived in Russia for 5 years. I have no desire to go back to Russia.
Right.
Maybe in a post-Putin era, we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. But I'm not going to Russia anytime soon.
Well,
I do want to go. There are 2 places I never got to in Russia that I'd like to go to. I never went to Vladivostok, and I never went to Sochi. But I lived in Russia for 5 years. I've had enough of Russia. Thank you very much.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's like with China. Like, I love the country. I love the people. I love the culture when it's allowed to exist. It's why I love Taiwan as much as I do. Because if I want to go to China again, my only choice is to go to Taiwan for the next few years. For the next 10 years, maybe.
Yep.
Because
same here.
If Xi Jinping is in power, that is not the China of even 10 years ago. Certainly not the China of culturally.
Considering that Russians are rounding up any Americans they can get their hands on, and I'm serious about that.
Yeah.
Any pretext that they could use, and I'm a journalist. I would be a great pet for them. So. Okay, and just to answer this question before it gets too further down the road, yes, I've been in touch with Malcolm. My standard operating procedure remains I will not talk about Malcolm Nance and his situation. I will say only that I've spoken to him, that he's well, and he is fighting the war.
Yeah.
He's out there fighting. So that's all I'll say, because I'm not going to compromise his security.
Also,
I'm going to stay. I'm going to get out of Odessa very soon. As a matter of fact, I only stayed an extra few days because I had a couple projects and potential projects, a couple of which kind of fell through, unfortunately. But it is what it is. So I will head back to Kiev, and I'll kind of figure out what to do after that.
Right. There we go. Hold on.
Does the current occupation of Severodonetsk and the pressure on Lysychansk change your opinions on the ultimate outcome of the war or the timetable? Now, the timetable, yes, but not the outcome. I think I think inevitably, I can't see a good solution for Russia in this war. I think ultimately Ukraine is victorious in one way, shape, or form. The timetable, I accept, might be pushed back. I thought this was going to be. I thought that the Russians would be their offensive capabilities would be unsustainable, kind of October.
Yeah.
But it is potential. It's possible that this gets pushed back even further. But I disagree with people that say this is going to be a multi-year war. Yeah.
You're listening.
Welcome back to the show. So,
comment from Aaron?
Which one? Sorry.
Chicago just sounds like static to us.
That's weird. Oh yeah, there's something going on the feed from there. I didn't even see it show up in the meter, so I'm not quite sure what the issue is. Let me try and fix that while we're talking. But you have some questions for
Sure do.
No audio from.
Why doesn't the Ukrainian government evacuate the cities that the Russian troops are approaching before the cities are surrounded?
They do. They absolutely 100% do. But you can't force people to leave. And a lot of people, in particular in Severodonetsk, a lot of people were like, no, we're not going to leave. I know the same thing kind of happened in Mariupol. You can't force people to leave, but they do conduct massive evacuations when they see the Russians headed towards the city. And that's why I saw Trump this week ranting about how the Ukrainians are obviously hiding the numbers of dead because you see these apartment buildings that have been blasted, and then they say only a couple hundred people died in the city or something like that. Well, it's because they evacuate. That's why they have so many internally displaced people out in Lviv or in Kiev. I mean, there are not so many here, but they do get them out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's awesome. I've got another one here from Ed's 3D Tech. Can you ask Phil how about Mars missile systems and how well they're working? Did you and Hal already talk about this?
A little bit.
We talked about it. I mean, there are four confirmed. I would not be terribly surprised if there are more than that. They are using them in a very specific way. They are using them in anti-battery attacks. So when the Russians open up fire with their artillery, because they outdistance Russian artillery, they're using them to destroy the Ukrainian forces are using the HIMARS to destroy Russian artillery. You don't want to put those things too far forward, because if you put them too far forward, they are vulnerable and you can't lose them. You absolutely cannot lose them. So they're keeping them safe. They're using for very specific purposes, and that's to destroy, outdistance and destroy Russian artillery. Yes, my beard is completely out of control, and when I get back to Kiev, I'm going to get it cleaned up.
I don't think so. I think yeah, absolutely. I think we can get another one in.
Okay, so from Blue Dog 1969, they were wondering if Phil knows if Ukraine has been able to move any grain through Poland or Moldova.
Yeah, I saw that question. Yes, some grain has been able to get moved out. What they're doing is they're sending it up the Danube, and they're trying to get it to the Baltics. So I know that there was a shipment that went out of, I want to say it was either Latvia or Lithuania, but it's not going to do it. It's not sufficient. It's a fraction of what they need to be sending. And the problem is it's harvest time right now, okay? So they're currently harvesting. This year's crop is not the problem. This year's crop, they're going to harvest. They're implementing a new system for storage, and they can hold on to these things probably until the end of winter. So there's not a massive urgency in terms of getting it to market. And the capability of getting it to market, they can do it. The problem is that what they do is that, as farmers around the world do, you don't just harvest your crop, get money, and then you move on to the next thing. When you get your crop to market, the money that you get back, you buy grain, you buy seeds, you buy fertilizer, you buy for next year's crop. It's next year's crop that's going to be the problem. And we will know by the end of September, if they are not able to plant next year's crop, there's almost inevitably going to be a food crisis.
Yes.
And we'll see it coming. We'll know.
The U.S., while we had a diminished winter wheat harvest, our summer or spring wheat harvest is up, as is Canada. Both the United States and Canada are producing, I think, somewhere between 6 and 8% more than they do to try and deal with the fact that next year's stores will be down. Never mind the fact that the idea that China is hoarding half the world's grain, both corn and wheat. Understand that wheat that they're talking about is either eaten or rotten. It doesn't exist. This idea that they have a year and a half stores, even the stuff they stole is either eaten or rotten. The idea that they've stored enough for 2 years or a year and a half is nonsense. The Russians know it, the Chinese know it. That's just goofiness. It's a story they're telling, just like 4,000 COVID deaths. And that means they're going to need more wheat next year. They don't have that. And so that in and of itself, that demand still exists. The idea that they won't have that demand next year, so they won't be taking it from the the market is absurd. And that's very scary for the Chinese people. We can take it. Let's take another question too.
We should all be very concerned about the food. And that's why they're attacking food storage. That's why they're attacking fields. And the Russians are doing it on purpose because, again, we saw this week how we talked about it on your Wednesday show, Margarita Simonian openly saying, and this is just it's just disgusting that she said this, that the Russians are actually relying on famine. That it'll force the international community to compromise when it comes to the Ukrainian war. And that's just disgusting given the fact that in the 20th century, millions of Ukrainians were purposefully starved to death by Russia. So to use hunger and famine against this country again in the 21st century, it's just absolutely
most of
disgusting.
Their tactics are stuff. Most of their tactics currently going on in Ukraine are stuff that worked before should work again. That's and it won't because 2022 is not 1942. And they seem somehow unable to grasp that idea. And we also talked, Shoigu, is that his name? What's the defense minister? Yeah, Shoigu. That guy, like Putin makes $140,000 a year U.S., and Shoigu makes $120. He makes $120,000 allegedly, or whatever. He has a $18 million house. That is, if you want a sign that every nut and bolt on Russian military gear is being sold, if they think every other bolt is being sold, if they think no one will miss it, if that is a huge part of the problem that they're facing right now. Nobody can trust their gear. I wouldn't doubt if there's a Russian soldier that finds out his firing pin has been sold, off out of a gun he holds up to try and save his own life in a firefight. It is that bad. And
we have widespread reports of them taking boots from Ukrainian prisoners of war and from corpses because their own boots are rubbish. So
they're old, they're rotten, or they're running around tennis shoes.
They run around tennis shoes. That's right. I mean, the whole power structure in Russia is built on a kleptocracy, and you have to be a participant in it. Lavrov's kids are, disproportionately wealthy. Peskov, the whole cast of characters. If you hold power in Putin's Russia, you are skimming off from somewhere because you have to, because that's the way the system. And if you don't, then you are the one good clean cop in a police department filled with dirty cops, and all the dirty cops are going to turn on you. That's the analogy I use.
And welcome to the last few months where we've got these Russian oligarchs who were allegedly on the team, but maybe not enough, who magically are murder-suiciding themselves and their families in properties all over Europe. I mean, it was 3 whole families to my count, and 5 other guys who just took a walk out a window where there was no balcony. Statistically, knowing Russia's a significant number of those folks, that's not what really happened, and that's a scary thought. That anybody who might push back about this is being done in.
Or if you know where the proverbial bodies are buried, I mean, I still think Vladimir Zhirinovsky dying during this war. Zhirinovsky was often seen as a clown who could sometimes tell the truth, and that was his usefulness to Putin. And he, now mind you, he never lived a very healthy life, but the fact that he up and died during this war, not that I'm not one who goes in for conspiracy theories. But Zhirinovsky dying at the height of this war, I find highly suspect.
Well, and every single member of Putin's circle has plausible mortality. None of them. Yeah. Nobody would be surprised if any of them died, if not by just natural causes, by the other stuff they are gacked up in other countries. The financial dealings they have with arms dealers and God knows who else. Even beyond their relationship with Russia. So it makes them easy targets if you do decide to broom them. Let's see. Let's take since we got over the break last time, let's take an early break right now. We'll come back, and in our happy ending, we will have some more questions from the chat room for Philip. This is the HAL Sparks Radio
and
program.
One of them, I'm
Mega
going to prepare
Worldwide.
Phil. One person, Sam Sasquatch, is asking if Phil has a happy ending from Ukraine.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that makes that's heavy lifting. Sometimes we'll be back right after this. Yeah, I just coined the phrase plausible mortality,
I like that.
but I think that's integral to to how the Kremlin runs its system, because you fatten and drug up everybody in the circle, make sure they have plenty to drink and plenty of stuff to do, and it's completely plausible he has syphilis. And then if they kick off, you're like, well, what do you expect? I mean, look at the guy. But ultimately, you get to pick the time they leave the earth.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, it's also something the Russians have done even well before Putin. I mean, look at Stalin's era. There's that famous picture of him on the banks of the Moscow River, and everybody over the years, everybody is kind of like airbrushed out of the photograph until it's just down to Stalin.
Yeah, like they're being X'd out by a serial killer.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they all got sick.
Right. Who'd have thunk it?
It's Russian 101.
Right.
It really is.
Hopefully,
the czars before it. Absolutely. It's historic the way they do it.
What'd you say?
Go ahead, Johnny.
How epic your beard is. People love
it.
Yeah. See,
I gotta get it under control.
No, you don't. I think they're
perfectly in control.
Yeah, they're appreciating it. Yes. Security out is next.
Reading these chats.
I don't know if Marilyn Garland went to Lysychansk. I don't think he did. I think he was just in Kiev.
Yeah, I don't think it's smart for American lawmakers, especially, to venture out into anywhere that is remotely.
Or stay too long
coming back in 20.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, we're coming back.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
Yay! It's
we love our Kate McCucci.
We do. We love Garfunkel and Oates, and wherever they go, we want to go out and support. If they come anywhere near you, or they have a special, or any of that, just buy their stuff, support them, if only for the beauty of that particular song and the rest of the great comedy that they do. Now, one of the reasons why you and I often talk about sort of the optimistic furor that I think is necessary in a situation like this is because what are people fighting for if not the right to live the life they want, to be happy, to have a life for their children and all this kind of stuff. So when we play those things, I want to make sure that anybody who just kind of stumbles on things doesn't think we're trivializing. As a matter of fact, I think this is what makes it important, because I look forward to when in peacetime, when people can get caught up in television shows and songs and sports teams, that's far better. That is what we are shooting for. No pun intended. So there you go.
You see these Ukrainian soldiers coming back to their homes for a little R&R, and they're greeting their kids and they're meeting their loved ones. Some of them are taking bows when they get away from the front line, just for a moment of normality. And to remember why it is they're fighting. I saw this beautiful picture earlier this week, and I tweeted it out, of this couple. It's this woman who was taking a moment with her husband, who was in uniform, and he was about to go to the front, back to the front, and it was very tender moment when they were kind of like, you go do what you have to do. I'll miss you, but you go do what you have to do. And I made the point that that's why they're not fighting for some sort of,
abstract,
fabled idea of past glory of the state, which is what Russia's fighting for. They're fighting for a future where they can have a home and a family, and they can care for their loved ones, and their loved ones can have a future, whether it's their significant other, whether it's their child. And that, that's the antithesis of fascism. They're not fighting for fascism. It's this recurring thing that won't go away. They're fighting for the idea of a free and independent country, long overdue, that has been colonized for centuries, and they're fighting for the right for self-determination. And that's as far away from fascism as I can think. And there will come a day when this country will be free. There's not a doubt in my mind. There's no way the Russians can destroy the concept of a Ukraine, which is what they really do want to do. And they've lost that when they weren't able to take Kiev and decapitate the government. They lost a major strategic objective of theirs, and they're not going to get it back. There will be a country called Ukraine at the end of this war, and that's something that Russia was actively trying to destroy and openly, said so. And they're not going to get it. They're just not going to get it. There's going to be a country called Ukraine, and they might lose the Donbass. I don't think they will, but they might. But that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Even if they do take 20% of what was the country in 2014, there will still be a place and a country called Ukraine that speaks Ukrainian, that isn't under the thumb of Moscow, and frankly also isn't under the thumb of Brussels or Washington, because I don't believe they're going to accept that either. They've been a colonial power. They know what that's like, and they're not going to submit themselves to that by anyone.
Well, we're not interested. Honest to God.
And I don't think, yes, I agree. I don't think Brussels might be, but Washington is not.
Which is largely an economic thing.
It's largely an economic and a balance of power.
Right. Let's specifically, let's grab another question from the chat, because I know where I will take this conversation, and hopefully you can be back on Wednesday, and you and I can get into our longer form conversation
absolutely.
about stuff. But I really want to.
Touch wood. I'll be in Kiev.
So we got from Andrea Brower, one of our mods, asked, "What's the news on the artillery missile fire from Belarus into Kiev and Lviv?"
Artillery fire from Belarus into Kiev the distance is too far. Well, distance is too far for either one of them, but the potential of an attack. Again, I don't think that an attack out of Belarus is possible.
Right. Not right now.
No.
They would have to decapitate the leadership they'd have to decapitate the leadership in Belarus, take it over more directly. He'd have to install somebody, and then that person would have to have
even if they did that, the Belarusians would stand up in a heartbeat.
Right.
No, I am not worried particularly about an offensive coming out of Belarus. I don't see the feasibility of it. And again, I also don't see why expend your forces that way. Strategically, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them, because they're never going to be able to shut the border off. And going for, ultimately, the objective in the West is Lviv, and going for Lviv, to expend the kind of manpower that it would take to get to Lviv, it would be a waste of time. When what they really want to do, if they really wanted to bolster and stage a stronger offensive, what they really need to do, and I'm not giving free advice to the Russians, even if they did listen to me, but they would strike back towards Kherson, because if they lose the canal, they're in deep, deep trouble in Crimea.
Yeah, then Crimea is gone. Right, exactly. And that's partly why, the Ukrainians are looking to secure Kherson as a more important strategic point, and maybe perhaps doing a bit of, like we said, a rope-a-dope up in Severodonetsk to draw that attention up there, because the Russians seem to fall for it every single time because ego is more important to their military strategy than actually clear thinking or a functioning military leadership. I mean, if that was otherwise, they'd have a functioning NCO, a non-commissioned officer class, and they wouldn't have done put their plan together as kind of what I guess effectively is a shock and awe attempt in the early days, knowing full well they didn't have the ability to carry through with it, and certainly not hold the land after the fact in a country of 44 million people. Again, Vladimir Putin has never invaded or been in a military invasion that involved a country with more than 4 million people in it. Never.
Yeah. And look, all the doomsayers that are out there saying, oh, look, they're giving up Severodonetsk, it means the Ukrainians are folding. Nah, 100% no. They are absolutely, the Ukrainians are outclassing the Russians on almost every single front, both literal and figurative. And they're going to, the counteroffensive has not even, look, when the HIMARS showed up, it was a very interesting statement that came out of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. It said that this means that it's going to be a very long and hot summer for the Russians, and for many of them, it will be their last.
Wow.
And that's the mentality of the Ukrainians. And I don't think it's just bluster. I really do think that they're biding their time. They're setting things up, and they will come back in strength. And it's not going to go well for the Russians.
Right. And no matter what anybody says, if you're a country that size and you're attacked by a country the size of Russia, you are going to have to make strategic decisions about land to give versus land to keep. Just like the Allies did during World War II, just like Russia did when they were fighting the Nazis, just like Germany did when they were fighting, as well. You're going to have to do it. You're going to have to make those kind of decisions. It's awful. That's the reality of it. That's also why you don't put inserious, bloviated kleptocrats in charge of that kind of stuff, because even if you do find yourself in a situation where you're like, I'm going to make a serious decision right now that's going to be a tough one, you may not have the gear to do it with because somebody sold it off years ago. I mean, that's effectively where we are with women's rights in the United States. Hard decisions and radical choices are being talked about, ceded ground and captured ground almost domestically, because the ground was sold off years ago out from under you by somebody who didn't really care or didn't think it would ever be a problem. And I mean, that's the lesson of this, I think, more than anything else, is that if you're going to be in this situation.
But ultimately, that's my happy ending, is that ultimately there will be a country called Ukraine. I am very optimistic that they will have a victory of one shape or form. I personally expect that they will regain much of the territory. The only thing that is an open question is Crimea, but even that might be in the cards. Regardless, this was a hugely ill thought out plan by the Russians, and they're going to pay for it.
Right, and they don't have the resource. Like, there's word this week that they were pulling forces from Syria. That the Kurdish forces that are normally pushing back against the Assad-aligned Russian forces were saying that certain areas in the country that were held back by Wagner Group guys and Russian forces are suddenly porous, and they've left people there where there's like 3 or 4 people where there used to be hundreds, because they pulled them and sent them not just to Ukraine, not just to the front, but to the Severodonetsk area, the region around there, which is the least important part strategically of the battle they currently are fighting in Ukraine. That
is 25 miles. That salient is 25 miles. They struck towards Kiev. They got 50 miles into the country within their initial strike. This has been really slow. It's a small part of the country. The Ukrainians have pinned them down, drawn them in, and they're expending forces that they cannot afford to lose. So
that's right.
This is not going to end well for them.
Great way to end the show. Thank you, Johnny Million, for farming our questions from the chat. Thank you in the chat. Don't forget to spank the like if you know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Philip Bittner, and thanks everybody at home.
Everyone.
Thank you, Chicago, and we will see you guys next week. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We're here every weekend. And
people were talking about buffering, but then they stopped.
That happens. That can be. Thank you, Chicago. They just bailed out right away. Good. They figured it out. Sometimes they lead me up, and then we're chatting, and then suddenly I hear the theme song of the next radio show just like blare into my ear. I'm like, oh yeah. If I don't shut them off, they will. If we can, a couple of like maybe two more questions, and then I'll let Johnny get on with his day and let Philip clear out.
So here's an easy one, Phil, if that is your real name. How long are you staying in Odessa?
I'm going to leave Odessa. I'm debating whether to go on. Interestingly, either tomorrow night or Monday is my departure date from Odessa. That's my plan. I only stayed extra because I was working on some projects, as I say, and a couple of them sadly didn't pan out, which is too bad, but it is what it is. Interestingly enough, the only trains that leave are overnight trains, and I have to think that that's a security issue.
Sure.
So whereas Lviv or Kiev, I could leave morning, noon, night, but in Odessa, you've got one or two trains headed north or headed northwest, and they only leave in the evening. So you kind of your options are limited. So.
Thanks, Hal Vickery, by the way.
I'll probably be on the train tomorrow night or the next time.
And here's another straightforward one from Carl Smith. How long does it take for you to receive snail mail from the U.S.?
To Ukraine? I couldn't tell you because I've never received any. I would have to set up. I'd have to set up a mailbox, which I'm tempted to do anyhow. But
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have questions, but I also want to make sure we get. Is there any more, Johnny Million? You got?
I do have one more. It's a little intense. It's from Ed's 3D Tech. Has Ukrainians' army communication improved, where there's no more blue on blue issues?
Yes, and no. They're getting more encrypted radios. But the problem is there's an officer class that is problematic within the Ukrainian army, and it's because they are the guys that are in their 40s and 50s who are hangers on from the Soviet training. They're unfortunately in a kind of a mid command structure. Their upper command structure is very good, and then they have a very good NCO class. And of course, they're soldier class. They're enlisted men basically. They're all really good. The weak link in the chain is unfortunately an important link, and that's the one where it's the connecting between the upper command and your operational command. And that's guys who in our army would be the equivalent of majors or lieutenant colonels. Were trained by Soviet doctrine, and so they have problems with command and control and communications. But they're working really hard on clearing that up, and they're also getting more encrypted radios to the people who need them. So I'm hoping that is a problem of the past, but I'm afraid, along with the other issue that comes from that command, that guys in their 40s and their 50s who operate like Soviet officers, they're not very good to their soldiers, and their leadership is lacking, even to the point of like there are reports of them like not reinforcing areas that need to be reinforced, or even there are some reports of them like taking pay and keeping pay for their own lining their own pockets. Don't get me wrong, corruption is a big problem here, but they're brooming those guys out, and I'm hoping that it gets better. I'm hoping all of those two major problems, the communications issue and the kind of corruption of that level, that strata of officer corps. I'm hoping that they're working on cleaning up. I know that they're working on it. I'm hoping they're being effective.
Yeah, I mean, in every war, by the way, in every major conflict, when we heard about stuff, we literally had to retrieve an AWOL soldier in Afghanistan, and trade people for him, that kind of stuff. That this is going to happen in extreme situations. The pressure and the extraordinary nature of these things will occur with some regularity because it is so horrifying, the daily experience, especially as time goes on and people are shocked by this.
Now that we're off the radio, I can say this: there are assholes in every military,
right? Of course, and they're
in every large organization.
Sure, right. The difference is it part of the strategic makeup of the situation, or is it pockets of problems that are isolated to a certain extent? And for the Ukrainians, increasingly anyways, they are getting rid of the bad and replacing them with good, and it's part of the strategy to have a unified and functioning system. For the Russians, it's baked in.
Yeah.
All of their problems.
You have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the Russians.
Right. And I'd like to thank, if I may, real quick, the trolls that showed up in the chat today, because you guys make it all worthwhile. I love it when you stumble on our chat, and it's often fun to watch them get shocked and dismayed that we don't get upset. When my chat goes, "Oh, hello," they're like, "But you're supposed to pearl clutch. You're supposed to freak out." And you're like, "No, we're fine." It's just nice to watch that plays out sometimes in the chat, and it's like a little mini slice of life play that I'm watching, like an old coward play, just like I'm like getting this, or a mammoth play. Just watch it play out and then it evaporates. So it was a slice of life. So thank you, trolls, for blessing us in the algorithm by being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, give a thumbs up, all that stuff that I'm supposed to say that I always forget to say. Okay, one last question. Let these guys be on their way.
I'm out.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. Well, then my last question, I guess in this part of it is that at some point, it's not even a question, it's an invite. At some point, since you have land in the Michigan area, Phil, when you're back home for the election, when you go home to vote and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to make a special trip to Chicago around the election, especially to do we're doing a Sexy Liberal show in Chicago, and right before the election, it's the last one before the election. I'll be in the area. If you need a plane ticket, I'll take care of it. If not, we'll just come over. You could drive in.
No, just drive over.
You and me and Johnny Million, and I'm going to buy you some deep dish Chicago pizza, and we'll take a bunch of selfies and share it with the chat.
I may be on a diet because I got to get rid of this gut, but I appreciate the sentiment.
It'll be your cheat day. We'll line it up with your cheat day.
I'm only like 6 hours drive. That's easy peasy.
I've done it. I've done that drive. Whenever I do Grand Rapids doing stand-up, Johnny will know. I will drive in the morning of the show, do my show, and drive back and do 2 shows that night in Michigan. So I know it well. It's not bad. It's pretty. It's a pretty one. Whatever. Maybe
it's a great drive.
Maybe
it's lovely. Michigan's beautiful. I love Michigan. I'm a Michigander.
Right.
So,
all right. Adore you guys.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Thanks so much for being here. Go have a great night.
We'll do Wednesday, right?
Yes. Yeah. I love that idea. Absolutely.
Okay. I'll be there.
We're doing. That's fantastic. And Johnny Million, you're beautiful, and I want to have your babies. Just saying it. All right. Cheers.
And everybody
Cheers, everybody.
My blog and all that good stuff.
Yes, that's right. I will post links to that.
And Hal, if you know anybody who needs a good, if anybody's doing podcasts and stuff,
I'll spread the word, man. I will absolutely. You got it. Always.
All
right. Cheers. Okay. See you later,
guys. All the best.
Let them out. Bye. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That's it's really cool, I have to say. And on a personal note, if I may wrap up, I know a lot of the chat has other places to be, as do I. I'm not doing the rally later on tonight. I'll probably do it later. If he starts really sweating up a mess, I might jump on late tonight. But I got a project I'm working on with my kid later. We're building a little playhouse for the cats out of cardboard boxes, and my kid's already designed it on paper. And so I'll be hot gluing cardboard later on while my son is the architect of a new playhouse for the cats, which I have to tell you, I'm gloriously excited to be a participant in. And so I'm doing that instead of torturing myself with Trump on this one particular Saturday. But I look forward to when Phil's here on Wednesday. But I want to say on a personal note how much of a joy it is not only to share my time with you guys in the chat and to look over while you guys are talking about stuff and having logical, peaceful, and motivated discussions, voicing your concerns and your worry and your anxiety, and at the same time, resolving to continue to deal with these challenges. And at the same time, have my buddy Johnny Million, who I went to high school with, be on my show regularly with me and share that with him every Saturday, getting to see him every Saturday. Because I didn't see him for almost 10 years during kind of the window mid-90s to when stuff was happening a lot around me. And then to have Philip Ittner be able to join us in, from Ukraine, and actually having a show like this, as a fledgling show on the interwebs, be able to have our own Ukrainian correspondent. It's a huge honor, and it's a great thing, and it's nice to be able to facilitate your questions for them. I just think it's awesome. That's all. I just wanted to say that. That's okay. All right, I'm going to let you guys go. Hold on, I have to cue my own music because it doesn't work in this situation. And I will see you guys on Monday morning for the HAL Sparks Mornings Mega Worldwide. And until then, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And remember, you have a responsibility to be optimistically and strategically forward-thinking if you really care about the things we talk about on this show on the regular. And I know you do. So hold on. Thank you for being with me.